coming up on episode 25 of Creative Writing.
Once you just decide, I am going to do this, everything changes, everything shifts, and all of those possibilities really open up for you.
I can't go back to sleep, it's almost light.
So you can actually get paid to promote your book, which is astonishing. The cool thing is you can be a writer and make money.
One by one the stars were disappearing from the horizon.
On this episode of Creative Writing, I am talking with Angela England, who is a powerhouse writer who has self-published and also worked with traditional publishers for her nonfiction books. And we're talking all about how to decide what route to go. And also, we're talking about the best practices for getting your work out there. And I'm so excited about this episode in particular because Angela and I are also going to be doing a joint webinar and a bundle that is going to be phenomenal, and you don't want to miss it. So as you're listening, the webinar or workshop is going to be November 27th. It's a Friday, Black Friday at 8 p.m. So after you do all your crazy shopping, I want you to head home, put on your jammy jams, grab a cup of coffee or wine or beverage of choice, and hang out with us so that you can hear all about some of the ways that you can take control of the profits by doing things yourself. And we're not just talking about ebooks. We're also going to talk a little bit about courses. We're going to talk about email lists and just basically how you can make money with your site or blog without relying on sponsored posts, banner ads, or otherwise just relying on other companies to do the work for you. It's called Creative Profitability, and it really is going to be fantastic. I know that I learned so much from Angela's session this year at Blog Elevated, and she has an entire course dedicated to achieving your publishing dreams, which is actually the name of her course. So she has so much to say. And even though I have done independent and self-publishing through Amazon and other places, there is just so much I can learn from her and you as well. So without further ado, we're going to dive into this interview. But if you want to sign up, and you do, for the webinar, it's creativeprofitability.com, and you can find all the information there to sign up. Again, it's going to be Friday, November 27th at 8 p.m. And don't worry if you're still going to be out Black Friday shopping, because there will be a limited time replay available. And so you definitely want to get that, because that's the way you're going to hear about the bundle. That's so good, because trust me, you're going to want this bundle. It's really fantastic. I'm very excited about it. So let's jump into the interview with Angela. On today's episode, I'm talking with Angela England. So how are you doing today, Angela?
I'm doing really good.
Well, I have to confess something as we start the interview, and I didn't tell you this beforehand, so get ready to be surprised.
I'm sitting down.
I know. Yeah, sit down. So I met you, I think 2 years ago at the Blog Elevated conference, like just in passing, and I don't know if you remember that or not. I thought you were doing some other session. I was like, oh yeah, you're here for Pinterest. And you're like, no. I'm here. You were really nice, but I was like, oh no, I'm here about ebooks. And I was like, yeah, that's right. I'm so sorry, because I didn't. So then when I actually went and looked at your site and did all the stalkery things that you really should do when you go to a conference, I was so intimidated by you because
oh no.
I know, because you have you have two giant sites that just have amazing content, and your one site talks about being the Renaissance woman. And I was like, she just really is good at all the stuff. And then this year at the Blog Elevated conference, 2 years later, we were put together as roommates while we were speaking, and we had the best time. And you explained to me that the Renaissance woman, it's not that you're awesome at everything, but I think you said you're a little bit good at a lot of things. And I was like,
yeah.
Oh, we can be friends.
Exactly.
But I really still do feel like you are really good at a lot of things. And one of those things is publishing, both independently and also traditionally. So I wanted to have a conversation about that with you today.
Yeah, that's definitely been an interesting journey, because I feel like so many writers are encouraged to choose one path or the other. And they kind of get this misinformation that, if you self-publish, you can never do traditional print. Or they feel like, if I go with a traditional publisher for this project, then I can't do self-publishing for anything else. And what I have found is really the exact opposite. Now that I have experience with kind of all of the three primary methods of publishing, which is ebooks and then print on demand publishing, where you're self-publishing, self-producing your book, and traditional publishing through like a major printing house. I find that I actually have more flexibility, because when I start investigating what the next project is that I want to tackle, I can start thinking, okay, what's the best format going to be for this project? Is it going to be, a freebie that I give as a newsletter download? Is it going to be something that I just sell as part of a course, and so I just want like a easy PDF kind of thing? Or is this something that I want a publishing house to help me produce? And so I'm able to really start evaluating the pros and cons of each method to see what's best, not for me for all times, but what's best for me for this project.
I really like that, because I'm all about the idea that it's not one size fits all for anything, whether that's blogging or how people monetize or what kinds of things you write, anything like that online. There's some general rules with things like how certain platforms work well, but I think what works for you is what works for you. And so I love hearing that you have found a way to make 3 different kinds of publishing work for you. So if you were to talk with someone who wanted to write a book, how would you kind of walk them through those different options to help them figure out which is the right choice for them?
So that's a really good question, because there's a lot of ways to approach answering that question. And one of the things that you have to look at is kind of the technical process of actually producing the book. And a really good example is the book that I'm working on that I just finished right now, which is Gardening Like a Ninja, a sneaky guide to edibles in your landscape. And so it's a edible landscaping book. I wanted it to be very beautiful. I wanted full color illustrations. I wanted a good friend of mine, Wendy, who does these amazing like adult coloring books. I really wanted her to bring some of her style in with these original garden designs that I had created for the book. So I wanted all of these really lavish, full color kind of pieces. And I wanted a higher quality paper and the printing than what, CreateSpace was going to be able to give me at a reasonable cost. And so for me, for that project, in order to achieve the quality that I wanted, the full color look that I wanted, I knew that I needed to go with a publishing house. I ended up going with a smaller publishing house than my first print book was with, because they would do the full color design and because I had a lot more creative control. And so that ended up being a really good kind of middle ground option for me I was with Penguin Publishing and with the first book, and it was such a huge publishing house that I really didn't have the ability to kind of push back with some of the creative decisions that I wanted to implement. And so with this book, the publishing house is called Cedar Fort Press, and it's a much smaller imprint. And I was able to I was working directly with the guy who's designing my cover and directly with the internal content layout and those kinds of things. And I was really able to have profound influence over the way the book looked. So it ended up being a really good partnership for that project, but it's not something that I could have produced myself in a self-publishing setting for a very reasonable price because of the full color and the quality of the printing that I wanted done. It really needed to be through a publishing house where they could help me absorb some of those overhead costs.
That makes a lot of sense. Like I've seen the mock-ups of the book and it's beautiful, and I can't imagine like the work that would go into trying to put it together, much less, like you're saying, the printing costs. So that totally makes sense for that. And I think for a lot of people, like you mentioned, things you couldn't do yourself, some people balk at the idea of publishing independently because they don't know how to do all that stuff. They don't know how to actually produce an ebook. So how did you... Well, I guess I still haven't let you fully answer, but it seems like so far the answer is, looking project by project in that example. But do you have some other kind of, things people should look at for making that?
For sure. So I think the other big consideration that you always have to look at when you're looking at a long-term project is the time frame. When I wrote 30 Days to Make and Sell a Fabulous Ebook, I produced that book in 2 weeks. And I was able to write it very quickly, to have a friend edit it. I had somebody working on the cover design at the same time. I actually had the cover done before I had the book done so that I could pre-sell copies. And, that book moved so quickly. Even my self-published book, which was print on demand, which takes a few days longer in the whole process of you have to request a proof and you get an actual physical copy of your book in the mail, and then you tell CreateSpace, yes, this book looks the way I want it to look. And sometimes that takes 2 or 3 steps. You have to do that 2 or 3 times. And so sometimes that process can be drawn out a little bit more. But even with self-producing that print on demand book, I was able to, I wrote my second print book and turned the manuscript into the publishing house. And then I wrote, produced, launched, and sold 1,000 copies of my self-published book before my second print book ever hit the bookshelves. That's how much faster you're able to move when you're doing it yourself versus going with a publishing house. So if you're in a situation where you need to drum up some serious money, maybe your husband is between jobs or Christmas is coming and the tires blew out on your car, and so your entire holiday budget went to $500 worth of tires instead of, buying bicycles for the kids or whatever it is. I mean, we've all been in those situations where it's like, oh man, I need some serious cash like right now. What can you do? That's where you're going to want to look towards something like an ebook or an electronically produced thing where you're producing it yourself and you have a lot more control over the timetable, which means you can get it out there a lot faster.
Yeah. And I remember like a few years ago, I think it's probably 3 or 4 now, I self-published an Advent devotional, and I'd wanted to do one every single year. Like I kept thinking about writing one for years because I wanted to write one that sort of connected the Old Testament with the New Testament, not just the Christmas story, but like the way the Christmas story is through the whole Bible. And so every year I'd remember this in like November, and I was like, oh, dang it. Advent's in a couple weeks. But 3 or 4 years ago, I remembered in November, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to sleep for like the next 2 weeks. And I did the whole thing, and I got it out and I promoted it. And, back in those days, Kindle was a little bit different in how I was in the Kindle Select program. So I did the free promotion, which ended up, I think I sold over 10,000 copies on the free days. And then that translated into a couple thousand more paid sales, which is awesome. And that was a really good model for promotion back then, but it is not so much anymore. I don't know if you've ever tried the Kindle Select, but it doesn't work so well now. Like anytime there's a formula, it stops,
It works differently. Exactly.
Yeah. So I caught it right at that right time. Like I got it in just in time to like make use of that. And then I tried the same formula the next year and it sort of worked. Like I sold a couple thousand more copies on the free day. So sold in quotes because it was free, but it didn't really translate into sales after, so things just change and you have to figure it out. But I was able to come up with the idea and write it and figure out the formatting, which just about killed me, but I did. And then, within 2 weeks, I had a book that was selling, thousands of copies on Amazon.
Exactly. And I think once you get over your own mindset of, I don't think I can really do this. Once you just decide I am going to do this, everything changes, everything shifts, and all of those possibilities really open up for you. And so I think that's to me, that's one of the main deciding factors. With Gardening Like a Ninja, I wasn't in any rush to get out the information. There were a lot of things that I wanted to build to kind of support that book launch. And so I knew that working with a publishing house and having that time between when I finished the book and when it hit the shelves was not going to be a problem because I was going to have plenty of stuff to do to keep myself busy in that meanwhile. And so I think, if you're in a situation where you need to move quickly, then self-publishing or ebooks is probably going to be the best option for you. Publishing houses, you're looking at least 6 months, generally speaking, from when you begin the process of writing the book to when that book actually comes into your hand.
If not longer. Like often it's 2 years, and it differs between, fiction and nonfiction and what house you're using, and all those factors come into play. But yeah, the short story is it's going to be a long story before you have your book done.
Exactly.
So, what have been some of your sort of highs and lows, like some of your good experiences and then maybe some things you learned the hard way? And maybe you didn't. I learned a lot of things the hard way, but, what have been some of the things you've learned and good experiences and bad that you've had?
So I have definitely learned the hard way. My first ebook sold about 5 copies. This was pre-Kindle, so Kindle wasn't even a thing at the time. I had no clue what I was doing. It had the worst cover ever. I okay, and you might remember, like, if you used paint to put text over an image, how it would leave like the white background behind the text. That's what I used to make my cover, because PicMonkey didn't even exist, and like I didn't know how to use Photoshop, which was only like Photoshop 3 or something.
And back then it was way more expensive too. Like it was not, a lot of these tools are way more accessible now.
You couldn't just rent it. So I and I was too cheap to know that I should hire somebody to make that cover for me. So my biggest mistakes, I mean, with that book, there were so many. The cover was horrible, for one, and so nobody like wanted to even click and see what the book was about. And for another thing, the topic that I chose, I like to use the example of knitting. I don't know if you've heard me share this example before, but if you're a blogger, for example, and you're going to write an ebook about knitting, your blog is about knitting, and you decide you're going to write an ebook to try to make some money. The two mistakes that I see people make are that they go too broad or they go too narrow. And I went way too broad with my first book, and I went way too narrow with my next book. And then I started figuring out where that sweet spot was. So I have made every mistake you can make. I have made those mistakes. And, going back to that example about knitting. So an example of somebody who would go too broad, it might be if you tried to do an ebook and it was, all you need to know about knitting, or knitting for beginners, or whatever. It was kind of this all-encompassing, the ultimate guide to knitting type book. Yes, your audience is going to be very broad, and there's a lot of people who are interested in knitting that might potentially buy your book. The problem is your focus is so scattered that you're automatically going to be in a bad position when you're competing with books like Knitting for Dummies or Knitting 101 or The Complete Idiot's Guide to Knitting. Anyone who wants to buy your book has already purchased that title. There's nothing unique. There's nothing special. There's nothing that makes your book stand out compared to the 10 other knitting books that person already has on their shelf or in their Kindle. So what are you offering that is going to be a focus, a hook, something interesting, a catch, right? A twist or a promise. All of those kinds of things. I think in your talk at Blog Elevated about email newsletters, you described it as you want your headline to be itchy, like an itch that they need to scratch. And your title should be for your book, should be much the same way, right? It should create a desire or give a promise or give that person a reason to check your book out. The other mistake is the opposite end of the spectrum, and that is going too narrow. And so in knitting, the example might be how to knit purple hamsters. You're going to very easily find or reach the 5 people on the face of the planet that want to know how to knit purple hamsters, but you are not going to be selling very many copies of that book, right? And so that audience is just too narrow, right? And that's going to limit the amount of books that you can sell. A better example would be something like 52 baby projects you could knit in a weekend. That's generic enough that it's interesting to anyone who knits and knows someone who has a baby or wants a baby or has kids or whatever, right? So that is a broad audience, but it still has that hook. It has that promise. It's giving them kind of, oh, I could do that in a weekend? Oh, I wonder what projects are in there. My friend made those really cute baby booties. I wonder if that, I could do something like that. And all of a sudden their mind is curious and they're interested and they want to see more. And so it's focused. It has a specific laser beam kind of promise behind it. But at the same time, you're still appealing to that broad audience. And when you package that kind of foundation with a beautiful cover design and good content that's well edited, then you're golden. You're going to be well on your way to having a successful product.
Well, there's a couple of things I want to point out about that. And the first is clearly in today's discussion, we're talking about nonfiction. So that's kind of the experience, the background that we're coming from. But also, kind of just thinking about that example you just used, what I love about that title is it has numbers in it. People really love, we all do, right? We love those lists of things. So 52 things. And then that you could do in a weekend, it's achievable. Like you look at that and you think, I could do that. I'm not overwhelmed. It's not the history of knitting and then how to knit every single thing. I might actually pick up, I don't knit, but I might pick up 52 things I could knit in a weekend because I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I'll learn to knit in a weekend. Like, great. Okay. Sounds perfect. But, hitting that sweet spot with the title and having something that makes people think, oh, I could do this and it has that number. And like you said, it piques the curiosity, that itchy term that I love. But also I liked that you mentioned an editor, and that's the second time you've mentioned having someone else edit your work. Because I think that is something that people, when they're doing self-publishing, often overlook. And I will admit that I've overlooked that with some of my books, and then others I've paid somebody to do it. And there's a difference. Like, I don't get emails when about mistakes I've made when I've paid somebody to edit, and the other times I do. And, when you're in a hurry, that can be really hard, but there are people that have a quick turnaround, and you can find them, but it is really important to have that. If you're going to sell a book, it needs to be professionally edited. I mean, that's just, I had Sarah Steidel, who's an editor, come on. I think it was episode 8. I'll have to go back and look. I'll leave a link in the show notes, but she came on and talked about that. And she said, anything that you're making a profit off of, you just need to have an editor, period. And so I think that's something really important to remember. And also thinking about a cover, that you could have somebody else design it. Like, self-publishing does not mean you have to do all the techie stuff yourself. Now, if you want to learn that stuff, like I did, I learned how to design covers, and I have a pretty good eye for that. And so, I looked at my cover up next to the other covers, and I felt like, what it's about, you can read it. Unlike a lot, if you go look on, Amazon, especially, the books are so small, and a lot of people don't take that into account. And so that was the first thing I was like, you have to be able to read it when it's like 2 pixels wide, like you have to be able to read it. So
in my course, I have a presentation from my graphic designer, and she talks about 10 mistakes that authors make on their book covers. And that is one of them, is that they don't take into account the thumbnail size, because Amazon displays your cover in thumbnail size.
It's tiny
in the search results, and also in the also box, which can have an enormous conversion rate for you if you have a good eye-catching cover. And it's absolutely worth the investment. Now, I will give you a tip that I used with my first book, the Making Money Blogging book, because our cash flow at the time was so limited as a family when I was producing that first big ebook that I did. And the way that I got the money to have an editor for that book is that I actually pre-sold copies of the book. So I wrote a blog post. I announced what it was going to be. I shared my table of contents. And then I said, anyone who buys this book, before it launches, will get a 30-minute phone call with me free, which is a, $50 value. And so I slapped a value onto the bonus call time that I offered. And I made enough in sales to pay for graphic designer, the editing, and I still had a little bit of a profit as well. And so I already had the book profitable before I had even finished writing it, so that I could make sure that it was well edited and beautiful when I launched it. And, you can be really creative in terms of finding that money. I know a friend who he mowed lawns for a weekend and raised the money that he needed in order to invest in what he was trying to do. And so, sometimes you just got to do what you have to do. If you're producing something that you believe in, then you should be willing to invest in that. I know a lot of people will sometimes make the recommendation of trading with an editor, and I will tell you that I have never done that, and there's a couple of reasons why. One is a respect thing. I feel like if I want people to respect me as a writer, then I should respect my fellow colleagues in this industry by paying them what they're worth. And the other, it's a mindset thing. When I have a friend who's doing me a favor, then I am the first thing that gets shoved to the back burner when things are going crazy at her house, right? So if I'm on a tight deadline and I'm waiting for her to finish editing my book, and I'm trying to launch it at a certain time because I need to get it out there, but her kids come down with chicken pox, I'm the first thing she's cutting off of her schedule because she's doing me a favor. Whereas if I'm a paying client, I am written in pen in her schedule book, and it doesn't matter what's going on. My project is going to be a top priority because I'm paying her to make it a top priority. And
now I've had, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that was a big mindset shift for me to come to that realization, and it has made a big difference for me.
I can totally see that. I think that you hit the nail on the head with that. And that being said, I have had some good experiences with bartering, and I think there is a place for it. But I think those two caveats are those are the things you need to think about, that is true, that you are not, there is a difference in mindset. So you will get shoved to the back burner. And, I have a friend, who has done some work for me, and I did work for her. And it was a good, even trade. And we both knew, but it was up front. Like, we were like, okay, this is my timeline. And if you can't do it, that's fine. And also we were really upfront, like, hey, our friendship is not going to die over this. So like, if you just want to get paid, just tell me. And if you think this is a fair trade, then tell me. But here's what we expect. So I think it can work. And, for some people,
especially if you're trading in kind. Yeah.
Yes. And so we made sure we both were, okay, these values are equal for us. Like, even if the monetary value for the thing was different, like I think I traded like a coaching or brand audit for an editing, and that kind of help. And so, if you can get to that level, but again, you have to set out those expectations, because working with friends can be a real challenge. And so you have to just make sure that you have like, okay, we're friends, but this is the time we're in the professional realm. And so I need this to be your A game, and I need it to be done by now. And if you can't, that's cool. We'll stay friends and I'll hire somebody, or I'll hire you instead of trading. So I think that's a really good point to make. But if you are somebody who's like, looking at this and you're like, well, I really think trading might be my best option, and I know a few people, keep in mind first, like Angela said, there's that mindset. And so you may not want to do that. You may want to find another way. But if you do it, set up those expectations ahead of time on both sides to make sure it's equal, and you don't want to lose a friendship. And I have seen people doing this kind of work, whether it's bartering or working on a joint project, and then coming out not friends anymore. So you don't want that, especially. So
yeah. No, I've been burned on some joint projects before. And I definitely appreciate when it's a mutually beneficial kind of thing, where both people come out feeling like they're benefiting from being able to work with that other person.
Absolutely. Well, I have two more things to ask you, but I'm going to kind of segue right now into talking about a joint thing that you and I are doing, because, hey, it just segued naturally there. But you and I'm really actually excited to work with you now. So we went from me being intimidated by you when I first met you, and then actually spending like a weekend with you in a room, and it was amazing. And we had great late night talks, and then, just then started brainstorming about like, okay, let's collaborate. And it was great. And so we've been talking. So this episode is going live on Wednesday, and on Friday, November 27th, which is Black Friday, Angela and I are doing a free live training, and it's at 8 p.m. Central Time. So we're doing excited. I am too. I'm really, really excited. So it's going to be do all your Black Friday shopping, come home, put on your jammy jams, and grab a cup of coffee or wine, whatever you need to get through your Black Friday. And then you're going to join us, and you are going to learn about more of this ebook stuff. And generally the whole broad idea is we're going to be talking about ways that you can monetize, your blog or your online presence without relying on sponsored posts or ads. So basically taking the third party out and using your words and your talent to drive revenue. And I could not be more excited about this.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this, because I think there's a tendency as bloggers to kind of become dependent on those sponsored posts. And sometimes that limits us from being able to tackle the bigger projects that we want to do. When I got the book contract for Gardening Like a Ninja, I really needed to get it finished by a certain time this summer. And we had just bought a new house. So here I am moving into a new house, starting homeschooling with 5 kids. I dropped all sponsored posts for about 6 months on Untrained Housewife completely. I did 0 sponsored posts. And so if I hadn't had some of those mechanisms in place that had kind of a renewable, ongoing source of income for me, it really would have hurt our finances to go from, so much to nothing. And instead, what I found is that those systems were kind of standing me in good stead, and that I was able to do that, free up my time to really focus on what I needed to focus on to move my career forward.
Yeah. And, for me, my journey has kind of been, like I said, I started self-publishing a few years ago on Amazon, and the system was just different then. And so I did that, but I feel like I've been having children forever. I have 4 kids. The oldest is 7, and the younger 2 are 2 and 1. So like we've had like an explosion of babies in my household. And then there's another one I forgot to mention. He's 5. So there's 4 of them. And so I started doing the self-publishing, and then had a bunch of babies, and then everything changed in the market, and then I didn't have time to research it. And so, my stuff is just up there and it's not doing anything, and the promotion looks different, and I'm not fully sure how to do that. And then I started seeing all these people making money with ads and sponsored posts. And so I started really chasing that. And while I do still have some sponsored relationships, like with Imperial Sugar, that are more long-standing relationships, I've really backed away from most of the sponsored posts, because for me, I started feeling like, I don't know, it's just different for everybody. I'm not against sponsored posts, but for me, it started to feel like you were saying, like I was just chasing the wrong dream. Like if I kept doing those or getting paid for these side gigs, I wasn't doing the main gig. I wasn't doing the things I was really passionate about. And in the long run, once you do a sponsored post, it's over. It's done. You've been paid. And so you have that payday. But if you are creating your own courses, if you're creating your own ebooks, if you're creating your own kind of systems in place and figuring out, building your email list and learning how to monetize that, you are setting yourself up for a long-term profitability that you just don't have with a one-off sponsored post, even if the money's great at that moment. And so again, there's nothing wrong with those, but if you're trying to have a longer career online making money, it just makes sense to figure out how to take the control of that yourself. Because the other thing is that it can be, I feel like the market, like I mentioned with how Kindle used to work for the Select program, anytime something starts to work, it has to change, because then it doesn't work anymore. And I feel like we're at that point, we're at a turning point, I feel like, with the blogging landscape, where there are so many people doing sponsored posts, it just doesn't work as well. And if you are using ads, unless you're getting a ton of traffic, you are probably not seeing a lot of revenue from those static banner ads. I know I saw an increase in page views and a decrease in my income from ads. And that tells me there's a problem. So to me, the system is shifting and changing, and I don't know where it will be, but it's getting harder and harder to make money. So again, the whole webinar, and we actually have a bundle of our products that we're putting together that we're going to be selling just after the webinar. It's only going to be available then. And I'm so excited also about the joint project, because we're putting together some of our courses and creating a whole new course that's all about this, all about how you can take the control of your work, and also in a way that's not just salesy and icky. We're calling it creative profitability. And I love that title because it's about making profits, but in a creative way. It's not forsaking everything for dollar signs. It's taking the talents and the gifts and the knowledge that you have and finding a way to make it a more permanent, long-term profit for you. And I just went totally crazy and just ran off at the mouth, because that's how excited I am about what we're doing this weekend.
I am really excited about it, because I think when I began writing, there's kind of this myth of, the poor writer in the little cottage in the woods. And really, to me, the cool thing is you can be a writer and make money at the same time. You can be creative and be a creative entrepreneur and not have to be supported by somebody else, not have to be, living off your parents' money or, your husband paying all the bills. You can have a significant contribution to your family's income just through your writing and through what you're creating. And to me, the difference between what we're going to be talking about doing and, selling a sponsored post for $100 or $200 or whatever it is that you're getting paid, when you are producing something for yourself, you are building your own brand. When you sell a post, a sponsored spot on your blog, you are selling someone else's brand. And when you begin to say, I want to sell myself and sell what, and put out there in the world, promote this message that you have to share with the world, I think that is extremely powerful. When I started AngieEngland.com, it was because I wanted to show other women how they could make money from home, where they wouldn't have to choose between putting their kids in daycare or staying home with their kids if they didn't want to. I wanted them to have the freedom to do what they wanted to do and not feel like money was keeping them from being where they wanted to be. And when I produce something like the Making Money Blogging book, and then I get an email from somebody who says, I had a 5-year plan to get to be home with my kids, and using your ebook, and the tips that you shared, I cut that down to a year.
Wow.
That to me, that's everything. That is worth all of the sweat and the blood and the tears and the gray hairs and the keyboard imprint on my forehead from trying to get everything done. It's worth all of those labor pains to have produced something that touched someone's life in such a profound way. And you don't have to lose money while you're doing it. It doesn't have to cost you money. You can actually do both. You can be a blessing to others and keep the lights on for your family, or put the kids in soccer or gymnastics lessons or whatever it is that you're wanting to do with your family. You can do both. You don't have to choose. And that's why I'm so passionate about what we're putting together, because I think it's really going to empower people.
I agree. And I think, for a long time, I struggled with the whole money-making thing anyway, because I've got my MFA in fiction. And if you know anything about getting, a master's in fine art, it is considered like the literary writing degree. It's not the commercial fiction. Like, people that come out of my program, we don't produce like the commercial fiction, the bestsellers. Like, we may have really good books and we may have books that sell well, but it's not that kind of commercial fiction. And so for me to even kind of think about like making money with my writing, it was like, ooh, because I come from sort of this background that there's like the artist background. And I've learned over the last like year or two that I don't have to make a decision between those two things, that I don't have to be an artist or an entrepreneur, that I don't have to be an artist or someone who makes money. You don't have to be a starving artist. Now, I will say that, for my fiction, like, I still write literary fiction and I hope to publish that one day traditionally. And I don't know that I'll make $1 million that way, but that's okay, because I'll make $1 million being a scrappy entrepreneur, and that's fine, But those things don't have to be untrue. Like, they don't have to be polar opposites for me. I can be the same person selling a book that I believe in, but sells like hotcakes, and a person writing something that's more literary that may have a more limited audience that doesn't make a ton of money. I can do both, and I'm the same person. It doesn't negate my work to do both. It doesn't negate your art or your writing or take it down a level to want to make money with it. So anyway, clearly we're both really excited, and I hope you guys join us. Now, you can sign up at creativeprofitability.com for the webinar, and it's going to be November 27th at 8 p.m. Central Time. And we're going to have the sign up form on that website. And again, it's creativeprofitability.com. And if you can't join us, like, if like, I'm still going to be in Target trying to carry around a giant TV, that's fine. There will be a limited time replay, and we'll also give you a PDF of all the slides. So you're going to get tons of great information, even if you can't make it on Black Friday, because it's Black Friday, but we will be there in pajamas talking to you about how you can pay for all the things you just bought.
We will not be at Walmart fighting the crowds. No.
No, we will not. In fact, I plan to just avoid the shopping altogether. So anyway, I want to get in the black this Black Friday, and this is how we're going to do it, is talking to you guys about how you can take control of your profits and make this long-term, make it dependent on you, not another company, not a third party that connects you with the brands for a sponsored post, not ads and banner ads that depend on page views, so that when, this summer for me, Pinterest changed its algorithm. I've talked about this a number of times, and my traffic was cut in half, literally, on my site. I changed nothing, and my traffic saw a 50% decrease because Pinterest changed an algorithm. So, even when you're doing all the right things and you're having the steady traffic, it can be cut in half by those things. Facebook changes an algorithm. If that's your number one traffic source, you're going to be in trouble. Google changes algorithms. I heard Darren Rouse of ProBlogger talking about that this week, that in his first couple of years, when the first year that he left his job and started working full time as a blogger, Google changed an algorithm and his traffic was cut 80% overnight.
Oh.
Yeah. And so in one of his most recent podcast episodes, and you can find that I'll leave a link in the show notes, but it's the Pro Blogger podcast. He talked about 8 ways that you can kind of protect yourself from that and sort of diversify. And that's really what we're talking about. I'm not saying you should never do a sponsor post or never have ads on your site. That's totally your choice. And there's reasons you should or shouldn't do those things. But this is all about diversifying your revenue streams and I keep wanting to come back to this idea of taking control, and also being the one who is writing, your stuff. I think there's something so amazing when you look at an ebook of yours on Amazon, or you hold it in your hands because you printed it from CreateSpace.
Tell you. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's totally amazing. And when you see your book, like the first year that my Advent book came out, like I said, it sold thousands and thousands of copies. And I broke into the top 20 bestsellers for the free books on Amazon. And even though they're free, like, oh, that's not such a big deal. It is. You have to sell an enormous amount of copies in a short amount of time. And I really wanted to break into the top 10, but I didn't quite get there. But it was a huge feat to see my book up there. And it was next to, other famous writers, famous Christian writers who wrote Advent books. My book was right there. And it was really amazing. You just can't describe that feeling when it's something you've created and you see it doing well and it's in the hands of thousands of people. So anyway, this is what we're going to be talking about. We're so excited about it. And one last question I kind of want to ask you, and I think a lot of people have, is how do you promote and do kind of a successful launch? And I know that's a big question, but can you talk at all?
Yeah. So for me, the biggest key with putting a book out there and really getting some buzz around it was definitely partnering with other people. With Making Money Blogging, I did a lot of affiliate program stuff. I got other bloggers to kind of beta test the book. I did the pre-sale launch, which really helped because I launched the book with testimonials of people who had already gone through, the coaching phone call with me, who I'd given the advanced copy of the book to. And so that was really helpful because I had those testimonials kind of gathered up ahead of time. The other thing that I rely a lot on are things like guest posts, even publishing magazine articles. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about at the webinar, is kind of how to get your writing out there more than just your own blog. And so anytime you can start doing guest column positions where you're kind of a guest columnist for either a repetitive column that a lot of people read, or on another big website in the area that your book or product is related to, guest posts can be highly effective. The other thing that I really like to do is reach out to magazine and podcast and other kind of publications like that maybe isn't just a blog post, but is really taking things to the next level. One of the beautiful things about writing for magazines is you can actually get paid to promote your book, which is astonishing. I wrote about 5 or 6 print magazine articles when Backyard launched. And some of them were extremely creative kind of twists. I had a connection because of a previous occupation with a Massage and Bodywork magazine, which is a trade publication for the largest association for massage therapists in the nation. And so they have a member magazine, which is a paid publication. You get paid to write in it. And so I emailed the editor for her before, and I emailed her and I said, I've got this book launching on backyard farming. Wouldn't it be cool to do a farm to table article? Because that farm to table trend was so just exploding everywhere from a massage therapist perspective. And of course, she loved it. So I wrote that post, and then I did one for the kind of customer side of things, like what would be in massage therapist waiting room when you're getting a spa, the magazine that you're reading. I had an article in one of those as well. And, I got paid like $500 for the 2 articles. One was like a little excerpt from my book, and then the one for the massage therapists. And, I was promoting my book and I got paid. I had another clip for my portfolio. So the next time I pitch a magazine, I can say featured in and as seen in, and start building up my portfolio even more. It was like a total win-win-win. So I promoted the book, I got paid, and I built my reputation and standing in the community. There's like a no possible way to lose. And so I think anytime you can begin to be really creative with the way that you're marketing and start to think outside the box, then you're going to be in a really good position to create a lot of long-lasting buzz and revenue. I mean, those magazines are still out, in people's waiting rooms. And I think by looking beyond just your own website, whether you're going to do that digital or print, podcast, YouTube, there's all kinds of outlets out there. Don't say no to any opportunity that you have to connect with someone else's audience. And that's the bottom line. You're reaching out to these other people who want to help you. don't say no, say yes, and find a way to work with them. And, if you have to go to your mother-in-law's house because her internet connection is better and yours won't hold a Skype call, then that's what you got to do. So I think, don't be afraid to take some risks, to step outside your comfort zone and really work with the people that are around you trying to support you.
I love that. That's so helpful. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end now because I feel like there's already some good value. We're already at like 45 minutes and we have barely scratched the surface of the kinds of things we're going to be talking about on Friday in the webinar. And so I really hope, even if like, hey, it's Christmas, I'm not going to be buying any kind of bundle. We're not going to do, I am so against like the bait and switch, like, hey, come learn all the secrets. You only get 2 of them unless you buy the course. And that's totally not what we're doing. That's not my style or Angela's. And we're going to be giving you guys value-packed information on how to take control, how to self-publish your books, how to promote things, how to do all the scrappy entrepreneur stuff that Angela is so good at. Like, I just love hearing how you're like, I'm going to promote my book and make money while doing it. Cha-ching! Like, that is just brilliant. So
exactly.
We're going to share a lot of the secrets that we have learned about creating our own content, about making money through the process of self-publishing and launching courses, and the things that I've learned this past year through just setting up an email list that actually works. And so this is going to be a really great value, whether or not you want to invest. And I'm going to say, though, you're going to want to invest once you see the bundle we've created. So you've got to show up Friday, or at least sign up so that you can get the replay and hear about the bundle. So it's only going to be available for a few days. So you're definitely not going to want to miss this. So you want to head over to creativeprofitability.com to sign up for that. And also, Angela, tell us where we can find you. And it's a lot of places. So I don't know if you want to pick a few, or just people get your pencils out and get ready.
Well, probably the 2 primary ones are angeengland.com. And I'm pretty much Ange England everywhere, like Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook. Ange England will get you to me. And untrainedhousewife.com, which is where I have spent the majority of my focus when it comes to email building. I have a good newsletter system going there. But I'm definitely going to be taking notes when you start teaching the email part of things, because I need some help with that.
I think we all do. That's one of those things. I feel like the entrepreneurs know all the stuff. And then and the bloggers and writers were like, I know I need an email list and stuff. And then we don't know what to do with it. And so, yeah, we're going to be talking all about all those things. And so you can get a taste for, some more of Angela if you want to know more about writing and publishing and all those things at angeengland.com. And it's such a great resource. And, for home stuff as well, I love the Untrained Housewife. And I actually did an Advent post for you. I'm just thinking about this now, like a crafty craft a few years ago with, I did an Advent calendar made of denim jean pockets.
I remember.
Do you remember that?
One.
Yeah, I'd almost forgotten that.
I do remember that one. I actually just marked that to republish, this week so that it would go back up for Advent.
Yep, because we're at the Christmas time now. So anyway, yeah. I'm just really thankful that I got to talk to you, and I'm really excited about talking to you. I don't know how we're going to manage to get it into an hour. We may be and anyone who wants to stick around for the second 2 hours, just stick around because we're going to keep talking.
I was told this interview was going to be 30 minutes long.
I know, but I feel like it was 10 minutes. It just went by really fast.
I know. There was a lot to talk about. So.
Yeah, and we barely, again, I had 10 more questions I didn't ask. So we'll save this for Friday. Sign up at creativeprofitability.com, and we'll hopefully see you on Friday. And if not, we'll see you soon.
Catch the replay.
Yes, catch the replay, and definitely check out Angela's sites. So thank you again, Angela, so much for coming on.
Thank you. This was fun.
October's almost over, and the dark nights are closing in again.
Okay, we've got so much more for you coming on Friday, November 27th in our workshop on creative profitability. Please join us. Again, creativeprofitability.com is where you can sign up to get the workshop or the replay and hear all about some just more tips, more actionable items, more ways that you can take control of your writing and turn a profit out that's long-term, lasting, and it's something you can be really proud of. So I'm, again, super excited. Sign up. Go visit Angela at angeengland.com. And we hope to see you on Friday. With that said, I hope you have an inspired week.
Here it comes again. There's a chill in the air, and everywhere you can feel the summer.